This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. The state of war is over, but Eritrea is still forcing school children into indefinite military service, says a Human Rights Watch report. Nigeria's president orders an investigation into the army's shooting of 3 police officers as the spat between the security forces gets very public. How some parents in Kenya are putting children as young as 10 on contraception in a desperate bid to keep them in school. Also in the program, the long road to the Hajj. Meet the man who got on a bike for a month-long ride from Nairobi to Makkah. And tonight, the English Premier League is back with the European champions Liverpool facing Norwich City. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Eritrea is being accused of turning school pupils and teachers into slaves through a repressive system of indefinite national service, despite hopes that a peace deal with Ethiopia signed last year would end conscription. Now, a Human Rights Watch report says thousands of young people each year are still being forced into compulsory military training even before they finish their education. It says pupils in their final year of secondary school are sent to camps where they are subjected to physical punishment and military-style discipline. Now, some are then sent into the army and others into teaching or government jobs where they remain indefinitely. The report says the policy is having a devastating impact on education in Eritrea, prompting many young people to flee the country to escape conscription, and some intentionally fail their courses. And the government has always said national service was needed because of the long-running border dispute with Ethiopia. Human Rights Watch spoke to 73 people for its report. Here is what some of them had to say.
When you go to Sawa, you use their head and not your own. I just couldn't see a future there.
Sawa is hell.
A lot of us were injured during the arrest. The military broke my arm, beating me with a stick.
The military official made me lie on the ground, and he then rolled on the ground very fast while he beat me.
They're making us into slaves. They're not educating us.
You don't understand if it's a school or a military camp. If you're a few minutes late, the military come and beat you.
Well, joining me from Nairobi is Emmanuel Igunza, who's been following the story. Emmanuel, what's been the reaction to this report from the Eritrean government?
Well, Sophie, we've seen the Eritrean government dismissing this latest report from Human Rights Watch, and the Information Minister, Mr. Yamane Gebremeskel, has been sharing tweets over the past few hours saying that this was a smear campaign by detractors of the country and strongly defending the national service. And he was trying to put into context why the national service exists in the first place. Remember, this is a country that over the last 20 years has been in a bitter border dispute with a neighboring Ethiopia, and they only signed a peace deal last July. And so the minister was trying to put this into context, saying that this national service is needed to defend the country, but also because of the long history of the struggle in Eritrea, the government has always maintained that it needed the national service for development, to develop the country. So, but the big question from many of the critics of the government is why 1 year down the line, the government has not made it very clear yet whether it will be making any significant change to this national service policy, because initially this was supposed to be only 18 months, but it has gone on indefinitely for many people, and for some Eritreans, they're choosing to leave the country because they simply don't want to be forced into the national service.
So then what would you say has been the major change in Eritrea since this peace pact and the borders were opened?
there is no mistake that this has been, the last 1 year has been a really significant one for Eritrea. It signed this big peace deal with Ethiopia, ending 20 years of the dispute. It also has had sanctions against it lifted just last year, and we've also seen the US removing it from the list of countries that are seen as sponsoring terrorism. But also many of the questions that remain are within Eritrea itself. There is still no constitution in the country. There is still no indication whether there will be elections. There is still not an active parliament there. Questions about human rights, imprisoned journalists and opposition figures, religious leaders. These are the questions that when you talk to ordinary Eritreans, those who have fled the country and living abroad here in countries like Kenya or in Ethiopia, they say they're yearning for reforms inside Eritrea. And this is not something that is not happening. Questions that the government is yet not giving answers to.
All right, Emmanuel Igunza for us there in Nairobi. Thank you. Well, let's now take a quick look at other stories making the headlines across Africa. The main stadium in Somali capital Mogadishu has been named after the city's mayor, who died as a result of last month's Al-Shabaab bomb attack. A report into the incident found that it was carried out by 2 female staff who had secured jobs working for the mayor in the same building. And the Egyptian security forces say they've killed 17 militants who are linked to a car bomb explosion in Cairo on Sunday. At least 20 people died in the blast, according to the authorities. The militants died during a series of raids and were members of a jihadist organization known as Hasm. A 6-year-old boy in Burundi, known for his comic stand-up routines on YouTube and in local theaters, has died of malaria. Darcy Irakoze, better known as Kachaman, tested positive for malaria on Wednesday and returned to the clinic critically ill the following day. Now, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has ordered an investigation into the killing of 3 policemen by soldiers. The police detectives from an elite squad in Abuja were in a covert operation to bring a suspected kidnapper into custody in Taraba during the week. Now, the army confirmed the killings but insisted troops mistook the police officers for kidnappers. Well, Chris Ewoko joins us live from Abuja. Chris, so the president has ordered investigations into this incident, but there's been quite a public spat on social media coming especially from the police.
The police actually took to Twitter to demand answers. They, in fact, sounded very angry and demand answer from the army while their men, the 3 policemen, were killed. In fact, in one of the tweets, the police are asking, where is the notorious kidnapper, Alhaji Hamisu Bala Wadume, rescued by the soldiers? They're also asking, why are the police operatives shot at close range after they had properly identified themselves as police on legitimate duties? There was also another question asking if Alhaji Hamisu Bala Wadume is a victim of kidnap as claimed by the soldiers and properly rescued. Why was he not taken to the army base for proper documentation as in line with the standard operating procedure of the army? In fact, these questions actually put the army on the spotlight, and as we speak, Nigerians are still waiting for answers, even as the president has ordered investigation into the killing.
Chris, what kind of relationship is there between the military and police in Nigeria?
Well, between the military and the police, there have been, to a large extent, some form of cooperation. But remember that the army, in fact, is under the Ministry of Defense. The police is under another ministry. And in fact, we also have some other paramilitary agencies that are under the Military of Interior. So what can happen is that there would be some form of cooperation. But where you have lack of coordination and synergy, and like what we witnessed in the case between, when the army, the soldiers of the Nigerian army shooting the Nigerian police, you're bound to have deadly errors. And as Nigeria fight Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast, banditry, as well as kidnapping that has spread across the country, there is always the need for synergy and cooperation, lacking which, of course, you have deadly mistakes.
All right. Chris Ewoko for us there in Abuja. Thank you. Well, teenage pregnancies are a leading cause of school dropouts, reportedly accounting for 25% of dropouts in sub-Saharan Africa. In Kenya, 2 out of every 10 girls between the ages of 15 and 19 are reported to be pregnant or have a child already. In the county of Kwale, an area with a high prevalence of teen pregnancy, parents are now putting their children on contraception in a desperate bid to keep them in school. The BBC's Masi Juma reports.
Clara, not her real name, helps the nurse roll up the sleeve of her school uniform. She has just turned 13. She gave birth 6 weeks ago and has been brought to this clinic by her mom to get a family planning injection. In the same room, her baby also gets her scheduled 6 weeks immunization. It is a few minutes to lunch, and Clara, a candidate in this year's primary school national exams, will miss some of the afternoon classes. She needs to help her mother take the baby home, a 1.5 hours walking distance, before heading back to school.
So what happens after 3 months? Are you taking her back to the clinic or?
She will get another shot. She will use that method until she finishes school. At 11 a.m. I will be taking the baby to her in school so that she can breastfeed her.
Child and teenage pregnancies have become prevalent in parts of Kenya. The coastal area of Kwale is among the most affected, leading to high rates of school dropouts and a continuous cycle of poverty. So many parents put their children on contraceptives out of desperation.
Those who came for contraceptives last year, those who were teenagers, they were 271. And below 14, they were 29. Some come without their parents knowing, some are being accompanied by their parents, especially the mother.
Schools in this region are partnering with the local government to come up with different ways they can employ to keep more girls in school. I am in Tiribe Primary School, and here peer-led discussions are being used to offer sexual reproductive health education. Teachers and health officials say they do advocate for abstinence, but not all adhere to that. Therefore, in such forums, the pupils are taught about contraceptives and the various options available. A majority of the girls opt for Depo-Provera injections and pills.
Say no to sex.
Say no to sex. Because they are hormonal in nature, they have what you call return to fertility, especially the Depo injection. The return to fertility can take up to 2 years. Causes premature osteoporosis, causes bone wastage. Now you don't want to start such in a 12, 11-year-old.
There is no sex education in the national curriculum in Kenya. Proposals to introduce this in schools nationwide have been criticized by political leaders and called immoral by some religious leaders. Meantime, many young people continue to operate in a space riddled with misinformation, myths and misconceptions. Masi Juma, BBC News.
Joining us from Johannesburg is Clifford Odemegu, a researcher from the University of Witwatersrand. He's been looking into the role of young boys and men and what role they play in teenage pregnancies. Thank you very much for taking time to talk to us on the program. What were your findings in brief?
Kofi, the finding of the study is that there's a total absence of involvement of young men and men generally in teen pregnancy prevention initiatives in South Africa, where we did our study. And our study, we therefore called that in order to address the issue of teen pregnancy that is common in most of our primary and secondary schools, there's important need to get to know what the men know about teenage pregnancy, what the young men know too, and why they engage in unsafe sexual behaviors.
Is sexual education or sex education a subject in schools in South Africa?
Yes, they are, but the point is that the emphasis tends to be more female focused. try to teach the female gender how to prevent teen pregnancy. But there's a total exclusion of young men and men generally. And the issue we are talking about is really to find out from these young teen mothers, who are the men responsible for this? And then secondly, how do we reach out to men to be able to be involved in activities that will help prevent teenage pregnancy?
So the question is how, and obviously you are a researcher in this area. How do you begin to cultivate that clarity in conversations between, especially the young girls and boys, on sexuality?
Well, we can't be hiding again our faces. We need to start from the homes. We need to involve religious organizations in schools. Exactly in schools, everything is taking place. But we need to start from home because the attitude of young men is really formed by the patriarchal system of African society. In as much as that system is disintegrating gradually, but the young men still believe that they have power over the female adolescents.
All right, Clifford Odimegu, thank you very much for taking time to talk to us on this very important subject. Thank you. This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come, the South African Springboks are a game away from winning their first rugby championship in 10 years, with a month to go to the World Cup. I'm Sophie Ikenya, and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top stories on this program: a Human Rights Watch report says thousands of young people in Eritrea are still being forced into indefinite military conscription, despite peace being declared with Ethiopia last year. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has ordered an investigation into the killing of 3 policemen by soldiers. The police detectives were on a covert operation to bring a suspected kidnapper into custody. You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. It's time now for some sport. Pierre-Antoine Denis, I'm sure you're very happy that the Premier League's about to start.
Absolutely, Sophie. I'm like a kid in a sweet shop. And Liverpool has the first dance in an hour or so as they host promoted side Norwich City in Anfield for this season's opener. Jurgen Klopp, Liverpool's manager, has a full squad, which means that Sadio Mane and Mo Salah might be on the team sheet tonight. Guinea international Naby Keita is also close to full recovery. The Reds are ready to kick off the season, and Klopp wants to show that the European champions are made of from day one.
I used this word already, but that's the new season again. So we have to be angry again, we have to be greedy again, we have to be all these things. And we have to create a football atmosphere. It's very important, even as a team who won the Champions League last year, we have to stay the team who nobody wants to play against. And not because the name, not because the quality we have, no, because of the intensity we put in the game. And that's what I will ask the boys for, and that's what we have to show tomorrow night, the first time in that season.
Liverpool, Norwich City from 7 p.m. GMT. The football obviously continues over the weekend with some pretty interesting fixtures. The champions Manchester City will travel to the London Stadium to face West Ham United from 11:30 GMT. Later Saturday, you can see the fixtures and this interesting Crystal Palace Everton at Selhurst Park. Wilfried Zaha wanted to move from Crystal Palace to Everton, but both clubs couldn't agree on the transfer fee, so the Ivorian will be in the stands, but we might see the first minutes of Alex Iwobi, the Nigerian, as an Everton player. And then to end the first Saturday of the season, Tottenham will host Aston Villa. And on Sunday, 3 great games of football: Leicester, Wolverhampton, Arsenal travelling to Newcastle, and the wonderful Manchester United Chelsea from 3:30 GMT. This will be Frank Lampard's first game as Chelsea manager, and on the other side, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer deals with a new front line after the departure of Romelu Lukaku. So a special game for both managers. Here's what they had to say earlier about the big show.
Been excited from the first moment that the job was confirmed. Obviously to be back here, I've spoken a lot about it already. It's a huge thing for me. But the most important thing is I want to make a success of it. So this is where it really begins. We've had a good pre-season. But now the real stuff is coming, you can feel it in the air, and I'm excited, and the players are excited, and now we have to deliver.
For me, I'm very confident that we'll get goals from Martial, Rashford, there's Dan James will come in and create. I'm sure Jesse Lingard will get more. So we do have a different attacking setup this season. Yes, we do.
And finally, in rugby, South Africa is one game away from winning their first rugby championship in 10 years. The tournament that gathers 4 of the best rugby nations in the world, including defending world champions New Zealand, will end this weekend. South Africa needs to win in Argentina to secure the trophy after drawing with New Zealand, and a very convincing win over Australia. A very promising performance from South Africa, 1 month away from the beginning of the 2019 World Cup in Japan. So can they finish the job Sunday from 1940 GMT? That's the whole question. But I've got another one for you, Sophie. I hope that you are as excited and looking forward for this first weekend of Premier League.
You can look at my face, look at the smile. That should tell you something. Thanks, Pierre-Antoine. Thank you. Thank you. Now, it's the first day of the annual Hajj pilgrimage in Mecca, attended by millions of Muslims worldwide. It's a mandatory religious duty for adult Muslims who are physically and financially capable that should be carried out at least once in their lifetime. So let's meet 4 men from Kenya who went the extra mile to get there.
We have got this opportunity to cycle from Nairobi, Kenya, all the way to Saudi Arabia, Mecca. Just time to be there for Hajj 2019. We are riding for about 3,500 kilometers. We are exactly 4 brothers who are cycling, and we are cycling for education.
Breaking the wind.
So like this has taken us for, say, like almost a year training. About 8 months I've been training. We will be passing from Kenya going towards Moyale, from Moyale going into Ethiopia, Ethiopia going into North Sudan, getting to Port Sudan, and from Port Sudan we'll be crossing over with the ferry to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, through the Red Sea. We will be covering approximately about 45 days and be cycling like 100 kilometers per day.
We found a young youth here trying to push us to the hill. Let's go! Let's make it! Have a good time!
This is the reception in our first stop in Ethiopia. MashaAllah, as you can see, the brothers have been welcomed wholeheartedly.
Allahu Akbar!
And there...
Well, we managed to speak to Mohammed Zahiri after he and his fellow cyclists arrived in Saudi Arabia. He told us the group feel amazing to have accomplished their long journey and that they are preparing themselves spiritually for the rest of the pilgrimage. Now, how about this for a feat of effort and engineering? This is the state-of-the-art Kigali Arena built in just 6 months. It opens officially today and is East Africa's largest indoor stadium. It houses 13 cafes, bars and restaurants, and a media hall and a fitness center. It is also set to host the 2021 FIBA Men's African Basketball Championship. A quick look at the top story on Focus on Africa. A Human Rights Watch report says thousands of young people in Eritrea are still being forced into indefinite military conscription despite peace being declared with Ethiopia last year. And don't forget, you can get in touch with me and the rest of the team on social media. I'm @CKenya. Thank you for your company. Bye.